Hello, YouTube, internet, the world. It is the eve of the 2020 election between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and I couldn't care less. I honestly I don't really care about the election, and I don't particularly care what way the election goes. I have no real vested interest in who wins one way or another, because quite frankly I don't believe it will make a difference one way or another. uh, I think the only real difference will be how much entertainment I can get out of the next 4 years. So I think maybe another 4 years of Donald Trump might be a little bit more entertaining. But one thing I do find interesting about Joe Biden is, will things, if he won hypothetically, would things actually kind of go back to normal, like all the lefties and libs seem to be insinuating? Like, yeah, everything will just go back to normal, go back to the way things were before. Because will that actually happen? So if Biden won, that's not really what I want to talk about, because I don't think that's that particularly interesting. What I do think is more interesting is talk about the vicious cycle that we're in between Democrats and Republicans, that we've been in for several decades now. And that's part of the reason why I don't think it's going to make a big difference as far as who will win between Donald Trump or Joe Biden. Because fundamentally, these two candidates are in favor of the same things. When it matters the most, they're basically the same. Maybe not quite literally exactly. Of course you can find areas where they're different, but not really different enough to make a difference, in my opinion. Not different enough to make me actually want to go out and vote one way or another. But back to what I was trying to get at, this vicious cycle. Because I'm aware there's a lot of people who think that if Donald Trump wins, we're heading down the road of fascism. And I think that's ridiculous. I think that's silliness. But then there's also people who think we might be heading down socialism. Now, they don't necessarily think that electing Joe Biden will lead us to socialism per se. It's more of a incoherent, contradictory, let's vote in Joe Biden so that when he does win, we can rebel against him and bully him and push him to the left, so to speak, and then we get socialism. Obviously that's a bit of a dumb simplification, but that's the general gist. Vote for Joe Biden and rebel against him, which is silly and stupid, childish. But no, I don't think we're heading down fascism or socialism. Instead, I think we are in a cycle, a perpetual cycle that will continue to perpetuate itself for quite some time, until something either really big fundamentally changes, or maybe something really small fundamentally changes. But I'm not sure what. Something has to happen to break the cycle, and I have no idea what that is, and I don't think anyone else really knows what that is either. To try to avoid false dichotomies, obviously I've suggested there's people who think we're headed towards fascism, there's others who think we're headed towards socialism, but there's also an alternative point of view. There are some people who think that we are on the edge of the apocalypse. That right around the corner there is some apocalypse awaiting us. There will be a collapse, an ecological collapse, an economic collapse, social collapse, so on and so forth. Just collapse, everything collapsing, everything falling apart and falling down. Collapsing, collapse, and then we will have the apocalypse. But I don't think we're on the edge of that either. I think that's just a silly, and it really makes no sense. I've seen plenty of evidence to suggest that the current establishment, the current way of things, is extremely flexible, is extremely willing to respond to crises a lot better than most people give credit for. Well, the current system we're currently living under, I think, can be best described as liberal capitalism. Most simplest, broadest terms possible. And the system that came before it was kind of a combination of stuff like feudalism and monarchy. I guess you could say those two things are kind of the same. But those systems were very, rigid. Rigid. But liberal capitalism is not. Liberal capitalism responds to crises on a global level. Doesn't always do a great job, but it responds to them. And it's responded to plenty of crises, and it's probably avoided a lot of crises. A lot better than people give it credit for. So that's a big reason why I don't think we're on the edge of some kind of apocalyptic collapse. To look at the suggestion that there's going to be some economic collapse. Now, I'm not saying the economy's great, because it clearly is not. And when I mean it's not great, I mean it's not great for working class people. The average Joe, it sucks. Having to live paycheck to paycheck just to scrape just enough to pay all your bills and survive from one month to the next, but not really have enough to ever save and make it better yourself, make your quality of life better. It sucks for working class people, but it's great if you're rich. It's great if you're at least a millionaire. I mean, hell, if you make at least 6 figures, your life is fantastic, very comfortable. Very, very comfortable. But no, the economy is good in this sense that the powers that be, I think, respond to things much better. I think the best example of this would be the 2008 financial crisis, which was awful, but what people tend to forget is the response to the 2008 financial crisis. And a lot of the way it was responded to. And I'm not necessarily trying to, sound like I'm in favor of how it was responded to. I'm not going to even go into detail on that because I just don't care to. But what I see with the 2008 financial crisis is a system that can respond to economic crises a lot better than people give it credit for. And it's why I don't think there's going to be any major economic collapses anytime soon. Just to put it just the simplest ways possible. It's just not happening. And then there's the charge of ecological collapse, environmental collapse. And I'm certainly not a climate change denier by any stretch of the imagination, but I think there is a lot of fear-mongering surrounding climate change. A lot of fear-mongering that is designed specifically to make you scared and anxious and very nervous. It is designed that way to freak you the fuck out, to make you a manic, nervous, anxious mess, because there's nothing you can do about it. That's the truth. Even, quite frankly, the powers that be, the most powerful people in the world, there's very little they can do about the climate either. Okay? It's not as easy as people think it is. But I know enough about what's going on with climate change to understand that a lot of the really serious shit that's going to happen isn't really going to happen in my lifetime, for the most part. The most serious shit that's going to happen will happen, in hundreds, probably thousands of years from now. So, one thing they tend to forget to mention with climate change is that it happens very slowly. Very slowly. It's a gradual process. It's not a matter of, weeks, months, years. We're talking centuries and millennia. Hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of years. And I think humanity has much to learn about climate change yet. That doesn't mean that, anyone should be optimistic about the future. Absolutely not. Things still look pretty bleak in regards to the climate. But I don't think we're going to be facing any environmental collapses in the next couple hundred years, maybe even the next 1,000 years. Not anything, too substantial. And then charge of the issue of maybe civil unrest, civil war, or a world war, and that's just as silly. Like there's, as far as I'm concerned, there's certainly not the conditions for there to be a civil war in the United States. That's absolutely absurd and silly. It just makes no fucking sense. If there was to be a civil war, who exactly, what would the sides be? What would it be over? Would there be states that secede? If so, over what issues? I'm sorry, there's just not going to be a fucking civil war. And if you think there's going to be a fucking civil war over, George Floyd or BLM or racial tensions in the United States, then you are smoking a lot of crack and drinking a lot of culture war Kool-Aid, and you just need to put it down. You need to detox, you need to cleanse, you need to sober up, and get some perspective, okay? No one's gonna fucking fight a goddamn civil war over BLM or racial issues in the United States. That's just not what's fucking happening, okay? It's not. And there's World War III isn't happening either. I'm sorry, the United States and Soviet Union figured that one out back the Cuban Missile Crisis. It just ain't happening. So, this is why I think we're stuck in a very, very vicious cycle for many, many decades to come, for the foreseeable future. Definitely for the rest of my life. Which I think is... I tend to be someone who's more optimistic, and I think that this is probably the most pessimistic point of view to have. I think people who fantasize about, the path of fascism or socialism or the apocalypse, I think they're optimists. I think that those are the real optimists, in my opinion, because they believe that things are going to change. They might not necessarily like the changes, but they believe it's going to fundamentally change. And I just don't see that. I just don't fucking see that. It's just not happening. We're stuck in a vicious cycle, folks. That's what's happening. Okay? There's no meaningful difference between Biden and Trump. Okay? And it's just going to be this way. It's just going to be this way. Politics suck. Now, I do think there's been some changes in politics since, let's say, 2008 to today, because when you look back at Obama, his campaign, it was definitely optimistic. It was definitely about hope and change. That didn't happen. But now we're at Joe Biden and Trump. And do I even need to mention the lesser of two rapists? We went from lesser of two evils to lesser of two rapists. So just, to me, that right there is the peak of all of this absurdity. You know, the peak of all of this absurdity. There were people. There were real life human beings who have a job, who pay taxes, who have a driver's license and drive a car on the highway every day, who were unironically making a lesser of two rapists argument between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And that is a huge contrast between Barack Obama back in 2008 and his message of hope and change. You know, the message of the Biden campaign is not one of hope and change and optimism and starry-eyed idealism. It is one that is brutal and ugly and nasty and cruel. It's fucked up. Okay, it is fucked up. It is, you will vote for me, an objective piece of shit, or bad, terrible things will happen to you. I think that's what a lot of people miss about why there's so many people that just don't want to vote for Joe Biden. It's their dislike. I think the average American doesn't really hate Donald Trump all that much and just doesn't really give a shit about most of the drama that's going on. And then they look at someone like Joe Biden and it's why would I vote for this guy? Why would I, what's actually better about him? There's just nothing actually better about Biden that makes him a better choice. In fact, Biden is a guy who in many ways, I think, embodies a lot of the worst things about American politics right now. He's contributed to some of the worst issues we're dealing with right now. He's a supporter of NAFTA. He's a supporter of, ramping up our military budget and all these fucking bullshit wars for the last fucking 30 or 40 fucking years. He's contributed to this bullshit. He is a guy that represents all these problems, I think. Who embodies them. And it's just that's why people aren't going to vote for Biden. Truth be told, the average American isn't that scared of Trump. They don't give a shit. If Trump's a big bad boogeyman, because they don't see that. At worst, they see a bumbling idiot who is an embarrassment to the country, but not particularly dangerous. But then it's they see Biden and it's is that guy really much better? He's not much better. He just isn't. That's why no one's gonna fucking vote for him. This isn't rocket surgery, okay? This isn't complicated. Okay, this is easy shit. This is a high school shit you could explain in a high school level political science class. Okay, this is simple. These are simple concepts. I don't know, maybe they're not that simple, but it's not fucking rocket science. There's no reason to vote for Biden. I still don't know who will win between Biden and Trump. The way Trump won in the last election was kind of a technicality with the way the Electoral College works. He obviously didn't get the popular vote, which doesn't fucking matter, by the way. All he needed was enough of the Electoral College thingamajiggies, and he got it, and it's all that mattered. He fucking won. The fact that Trump did not get the popular vote did not in any way undermine or make his presidency less fucking legitimate. It just fucking didn't, because it's not how our democracy works. And if you want to actually change the Electoral College, great, maybe there's something to change about it. But as of right now, I think most of the proposals to want to actually change the Electoral College are just reactionary and stupid, and I oppose them on that reason alone. The fact that they're just so reactionary, And I remember there were people like back in 2016 that wanted to change the electoral college almost to like retroactively declare Trump's administration illegitimate. I'd be like, no, actually Hillary won. No, dude, it was all wrong. It was all just a horrible nightmare. Trump didn't actually win. It was Hillary. But where was I? Oh yeah, the the fucking contrast between from like Biden's campaign and Obama's campaign message of like hope, and now Biden's like, you vote for me or else, or fucking else. Like there's no, like, I'm terrible, I'm bad, I'm the lesser of two rapists, but like vote for me or else. That's the message of his campaign. Like, and it's awful, it's bleak, it's fucked up, it's dark, So, the vicious cycle that we are stuck in, the very, very absurd, vicious cycle that we are stuck in. So, well, that's all I got. That's all I got for today, folks. Hope you enjoyed. Better go throw me a like or a dislike. You can throw me a dislike. I'm not gonna care. I can encourage you to drop a comment. Give me your opinions down below. A little sorry if this video was a bit rambly, a bit all over the place, and a bit hard to follow. Actually, I'm not really that sorry. But either way, if you stayed this long, how about you? Let's see. What can you do to prove to me you stayed this long? How about you tell me what's your favorite kind of like mac and cheese? What's your favorite like version of mac and cheese? All right. And if you tell me that in your comment, I'll know you stayed to the very end. All right. That'll be our little secret, our little deal. All right. Okay. All right. Adios.